you did something very exciting lately.
I did.
You went to Protospiel in the mecca of board game land.
Minnesota.
In Minnesota, I know. Hey, I'm sure there's other things in Minnesota, right?
Mall of
Snow?
America.
Mall of America.
Mall of America
yes.
and craft beer. That's all we got up here.
That's a lot.
Literally. And board games. Like too many board games, actually. Enough
all right.
to make a fort out of.
Well, there are so many board games out there that you guys have conventions about things that aren't even board games yet.
Yes, we do. Yes.
Tell us about it. For those of us who have no idea what Protospiel is, including myself, who have only had vague mentions of it, what is Protospiel?
Protospiel Minnesota is an event held every year for the last couple of years, I feel, at the beginning of January, where game designers will bring their unpublished designs to a Best Western by the Mall of America and find a table, set everything up, and invite players to come and play test their game for them. There is another event that I think is a little bit more popular called Unpub. Unpub is an event or a group that's run by volunteers. I'm not actually quite certain with Unpub as a group, but I'm aware that they run very similar events where you register with them, you bring your game, and you set up at a table space, and people are allowed to venture in and be like, hey, this game looks cool, and you get to sit down and play this unpublished game that maybe one day is picked up by a publisher. So it's like browsing the news section of Reddit, essentially, and just seeing what are the current ideas that are going through people's heads. For those that haven't seen it on our social media, we are actually a proud sponsor this year of Protospiel Minnesota. And I was there actually with a design myself that I was testing out. The game's called Hidden Paths. It's an abstract pathfinding game. And I came with my wife and a friend of mine and my developer, and we sat down and ran some demos. So to kind of get a sense of what Protospiel is like or an Unpub, you sit down, you register, you set everything up, and some people bring like signs, other people bring like just handmade signs. It's very kind of casual in that way, and it doesn't take too long for people to just kind of come up to you and be like, hey, what's this? Let's sit down and play, and you provide a demo. Most of the componentry is going to be either from like places manufactured from the Game Crafter, which is a very popular United States board game prototype manufacturer, where you get to go online through their website, submit some files, and they will be able to, at a price, be able to send you some fairly, more high quality componentry for your game to get it visualized better for you. People can have games on, just handmade paper. A lot of it's hand drawn. There's a lot of handmade things done by people too, and a lot of high quality stuff, like things that are literally very close to being done that people bring. But the one thing is for certain is that nothing has been published. Everything is not signed by any specific publisher or kickstarted. It's all very much in the process of being tested. And so what's really interesting about this is you start giving demos. What designers are looking for is feedback. And there's a good and bad thing about feedback when it comes to these types of events. Good thing is that you get this game out in front of more people and you start to notice things that you have initial concerns about that you take note of, that gives you good information as far as what you can do better as a designer to help fix and make that a much better experience for the player. The other, concern about that is that if you aren't specific with the type of feedback you're looking for, the game tester hat can be placed on people and you kind of get a wild, broad spectrum of feedback that isn't useful for you. So, for instance, my game's a 2-player competitive puzzle game, and the artwork that I have for it is this kind of watercolor, digital, mysterious, mystical forest thing. And someone thought that it might be better as a co-op game. And I was like, well, I mean, sure, maybe, but it's not. It's this, and it's not. That's not really useful kind of feedback. I mean, it's kind of. I'm glad like that's their interpretation of it, because that's always going to be useful to understand, like when they view a product, like what rings in their head. But to have it be a co-op game is it's not something that I was interested in, but that's cool and that's fine. Other things, people won't like a certain mechanic. People won't like, sometimes won't like the art or the idea of what you're trying to convey. If it was poorly taught, I don't know what it would be, but you can tend to be really all over the place with people. Like everybody has their own specific way of like how a game should be and it should play. And so it really comes down to taking notes and just being very, letting it all sink in, like not really trying to make knee-jerk reactions, right? Because really it's not a matter of this one player saying like, hey, this thing doesn't really work as it should. You don't want to be like, okay, I'm going to change that right away because it makes sense to you. Let that sit. Let that sink in. Is that really what you want to have it be changed just based upon one guy's feedback, right? One person's feedback. But there's just so many different awesome people that were there. And for instance, the designer of Codename Duels, I think, was there, who was a Minnesota native who played Codename so much and there wasn't really any good 2-player rules. And he was like, hey, I have this idea for Codename's 2 players. Here you go. And they're like, how about we just make this a game instead? So now Scott Eaton is the designer of Codename Duets or Duels, I think. I don't know.
Duet, yeah.
Yeah, like that's a really neat thing. And Marcus Ross, who does some kind of cool party games, was there. I met him last year, but not this year, unfortunately. Jeff Tidball, who's part of the board game sphere, is there for Atlas. Jay Little, who did X-Wing, was there. A lot of cool people, a lot of industry people. If you want to go and just network, like, spend the $10 to be a game tester the entire weekend and just hang out with these people. Like they're like, if you really want to get into the scene, that's where people are going to be. People from Leader Games were there too that came over. Just a lot of great people that are just there to just hang out, talk, and provide feedback, and just making something as best as they can as far as the designer wants to take it.
Yeah. Oh man, that sounds cool. Were you able to play any other games? Any other people's games?
Not this year. No. I only went one day. I only went one day this year, and it was literally demo after demo after demo after demo, like to the point where I got there at 8 a.m. and then the next thing I know, my wife's like, so we're gonna get Chipotle, and I'm like, what are you talking about? It's only like 10 a.m. I look at my clock and it's noon. I was like, oh my gosh, it went by so fast. But I do remember playing games more last year, so I'd like to share some examples of what I played last year.
Yeah.
So one game that stuck out to me, and I can't remember the name, but it was this little cute dice game where it had all different types of D6s, like D8s, D10s, D12s, D20s, etc. And you rolled them, and you were supposed to like stack the biggest tower that you could, like playing these cards to alter the different dice rolls. So like from like lowest to highest or highest to lowest or something. And you made this like cute little dice tower, that I found really intriguing. And so you were like fighting with the person to try to make the tallest tower. And I found it to be extremely enjoyable and because don't we all as board gamers innately do that with just everything that's around us? Like,
oh yeah,
someone made a game out of it. That's pretty cool.
I mean, who hasn't stuck all their pieces from like playing Catan, and you take your houses and your rows and you build little things with them as you're like waiting for your turn.
Right.
I do that.
Right. It's like someone took that idea and kind of gamified it. Yeah. I played a game where someone adapted like the Elder Sign mechanics into a game about like GTA. Like there was like a bank robbery thing, so it was a little bit more complicated. Like they kind of gamified Elder Sign a little bit more, but they kind of themed it into a bank like heist. Robbery heist scenario, which was pretty cool. Yeah. One of the other, let's see, I actually remember this one. The one game I played was an area control game that you attacked by playing Rochambeau.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, that was actually like you attack with like rock paper scissors. Okay, yeah, like whatever, dude. We played it and it was not bad. Like it was like okay,
That's really
like, it was
funny.
like it was half decent. But there is one game that was by far my most favorite that I actually think Scott Eaton, who did Codenames, did.
Hmm.
It was a game about, oh my god, I actually, now that I'm thinking about it, can't realize that this is going to be like the third or fourth instance that we're talking about farts. But it's this game where all he did was like he took a standard like playing card and he like folded it so that it could like stand,
Hmm.
and it was like a game about wafting farts and how you played cards that like made you do different kind of farts. So like you took this card, so like you had like this little emperor guy or something like that, and you had like these two shield people that you can put in front of your emperor, and what you were trying to do was knock your opponent's emperor down. So you had to kind of like strategically place your little cards standing up so that they would block other people's like wafting farts.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
like you'd play this card from your hand to do like a big waft, and so you'd take your emperor and you'd like choose a player, and through like a, I don't know, certain distance, you would like take the card and just do like one single like hands down like woof like that to just get like this waft of air that would like try to knock down everybody's thing. It was like I've never laughed so much in
I was
my
gonna
life.
say.
Like it was such a cute little game. And like the rules were super simple, and like his execution of how he described it was just the best. I For like 10-15 bucks I'd almost just get it for the pure just like uh not insanity, but just how gimmicky, like just a
Oh
silly
yeah.
ass gimmick. Like it's just it was just like a fun little, like that's the kind of thing that you can find at these sort of things, is just these really stupid ideas, really simple ideas that turn out to just like culminate like a fascinating 15 to 30 minutes worth of fun to something you would never expected. It's just it's a fun time.
Okay, so overall this year, do you think you had a good experience that it was actually worth something to you?
Absolutely, I would say
Okay, okay.
so, because again, what I ended up getting a lot of is that I came into Protospiel really having questions in my head about whether players would understand certain mechanics and rules, and having a time frame set in terms of turn order or turn amount of turns, that if a player didn't get it by like turn 2 or 3, there was something wrong with either what I was describing or what was on the card. And
Yeah.
so from there, I was able to kind of make a mental capture for every player and gauge their like, it seems kind of weird, but like gauge their energy and interest level as we
Oh yeah.
explain the game. And after like turn 3, I usually do a check-in and be like, hey, what do you think of it? Like we could just end it if you aren't having fun, or we can continue with it. And it was like about half and half. I've had some people be like, I get it, because that's what as much as my game would offer, but I've had some people finish them out after another like 3 turns. And so in all, it seemed like people really enjoyed the premise of what I was doing, and I really have a firm sense of what I could do better to make the game much more visually enticing in terms of having people understand it after turn 1 or turn 2 versus many people grasping it after turn 3 and turn 4. I really wanted to reduce that.
Hmm.
And so there will be a lot of things in this next upcoming version that I think will improve on those things, and we'll have a much more successful time as I take it around to local gaming stores and be able to test it with the local people there and build a community and see where it goes.
That's
So,
cool.
yeah.
Now they do these around the whole country, right? I think there's either
hmm
Protospiel or Unpub. They're in multiple locations. It's not just in Minnesota.
Yeah, Chicago, Milwaukee, in like another huge mecca for it, I think, is like in Indiana,
Hmm.
Ohio. Like they're also very popular there too. If you go on Facebook and follow them, like Unpub also goes to a lot of the different board gaming conventions. So you'll find them at PAX, you'll find them at Gen Con, those types of areas. Like they'll always have like a side room that they rent, and you'll find them that's like the like Clippy. Like it always reminds me of Clippy.
From
Their
Microsoft. That's
Yeah,
funny.
from their mascot kind of reminds me of Clippy. So if you Google for it, it isn't too hard to end up finding yourself. nearby one if you're ever interested in wanting to play test or to just be like you have an idea and just have it written down. Yeah,
that's interesting. And so I have a couple of friends who have brought over prototypes of games that we've played, and I always love the passion that people have about the games that they're designing. I've never had that desire to do a game or anything like that. I've had like ideas here and there that would be fun, but I've never wanted to put the effort into it. So I'm glad that there's people who actually do, because then I get to play them later.
There you go.
It's fun to see that process, and I would love to know what published games we have today that came from something like a Protospiel or an Unpub or something like that.
I could tell you one for sure.
Yeah,
there's so do you know who Gil Havas is?
I do not.
Gil Havas runs Ludo something or other, Ludography. I forget. He has a very, I think, well-known board gaming podcast that he hosts with other board game community members. And
is it Ludology?
Ludology, yes.
That one? Yeah.
Yep. And he made the networks. He made the networks, and he made Wordsy. Do you know Wordsy?
Mm-hmm.
He was in the Unpub room trying out this game called High Rise, and it will be coming to Kickstarter on February 4th. So so like at Origins, he was playing it, and literally he had like a piece of just a giant piece of paper that looked like he had done it on, I don't know, Adobe very roughly, and he had some like very cheap plastic towers, and he was making like if you think of a game like Expand City or games where you kind of stack things on top of another, like it was very much this like game where you're building buildings. And I remember that in particular just because I remember meeting Gil at Origins, and he was there at the Unpub room, and now it's going to be a fruition thing that comes out on February 4th, which will be exciting to see. So
that's super cool.
It's just interesting to see what'll come from there. I think there's a lot of games that came on Kickstarter that are pretty popular that will come out of these things. So it's just fun because who knows, you might be able to get the first try of a version of a game that ends up being super popular. That's the the fun in it all. So
yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. Well, that sounds like a fun experience. I'm excited to see what comes from that. And it actually sounds like something you'll probably do every year at this point, right?
Yeah, I think so. As long as we're still a thing, I think Rolling Doubles will probably end up sponsoring the event moving forward. So
that's the language of hope that I like to hear.
Maybe if this is still a thing,
if we decide to still do this, it's like, well, it's because we're going to meet each other and be like, well, it was fun.
That sucks now. It's like when your parents get on Facebook. Like you don't want to do it anymore.
Like, well, that was fun while it lasted.
It's like, oh god, it's so cool. Like we have to do another thing. Like we're gonna like make a zine together afterwards.
Like after this,
after this, it's like no more podcasting. Podcasting's dumb. Let's just make a zine where we do board games reviews and like poetry.
Poetry. Oh, like hand drawn comics,
hand drawn comics.
That's like photocopied.
Rising Sun,
really
Area Control, Betray Me. Like, it's just like...
Oh, that was the worst haiku I've ever heard.
Exactly, right?
Oh, well, good. Well, it's awesome. Well, is there anything else you want to say about that?
About Protospiel?
No, about our zine. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, Protospiel.
What would be the name of our zine?
Rolling Triples. No.
Yeah, that doesn't go off the tongue that well. Rolling Triples.
No, it doesn't. Okay, the name of our board game zine would be Thin Cardboard. No, because it's like a piece of paper. That was really stupid. I don't know. It's late. We are recording this really late.
It's like almost midnight for me.
It is. I think it's when it's time to wrap this puppy up.
Yeah, we're a little bit under time. We usually roll around like an hour 20. This is like just a touch over an hour.
It felt natural to me, baby.
It did feel natural.
Oh, was that creepy to you as it was to me? I saw myself say it.
As soon as you said that, I think if you just omitted the baby part, it would have been fine.
It's like that. There's a webcomic about how they're naming spiders, and one scientist is like, let's call it long legs, and the other scientist is like, that's not kinky enough. Let's name it Daddy Long Legs.
Oh my God.
It's so stupid.
Also, I'm sorry if I'm like being somewhat quiet. My wife's sleeping in across the hallway. Normally,
it sounds so boring.
I could yell usually in my downstairs basement hole. I can't do that anymore.
It's all right. We'll record earlier when she's awake next time.
Yeah, well, part of this reason too is because this last Wednesday we had our interview with Brad Andres up, which is exciting. Did you ever get to listen to it, by the way?
I have just started today. It popped up on my next. I just finished. Yes, I've started it. Is what I'm saying.
You didn't finish it though.
No, not yet.
God, you're a terrible person, or you're a terrible.
No.
You're a terrible podcast host.
Hold on. Yeah, you're probably
right. So for those that are just listening, this past Wednesday, which is going to be, oddly enough, my birthday, which was the release of that podcast, which I kind of wanted to have happen, but it. So here's the deal: like, Fantasy Flight PR needed to sign off on it, and I did not know when they would sign off on it. It could have been like still in the queue. Who knows? And I was just like, that's why I told you, I was like, I really wanted to still record a podcast, which is why we did it on Friday. And then literally the next day after I asked you, I got a message and they're like, yep, PR signed off on it. And I was like, oh, well, I had an idea of wanting to have it be like the January interview that we did. So I wanted to release it this week. So it's out there. It's live. It did really well on our Twitters and our Instas.
So good.
Yeah, so good.
Good.
We talked about Quixo and how he has a pair of socks with his face on it that he owns, and then they donate a pair. So somewhere out in the world, there are Quixo the Adventurer socks that have been donated that somebody owns potentially.
That's really funny.
So if they aren't owned, they're somewhere that one could go on a hunt to find. We talk a lot about Keyforge. If you're listening to the podcast and don't know what Keyforge is, we just talk about the basics. We talk about, how he got into the LCS team at Fantasy Flight. We did the famous Rolling Doubles Lightning Round, in which I had to think on the spot questions because I wrote them in my notebook and I forgot my notebook. But our standard questions, Jacob Affair still applied.
Good.
We talk about my hair.
It sounds like a riveting interview. I'm really excited to listen to it.
Yeah, rate it. Smash that like if you really nice hair.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, well, obviously.
So, yeah, and then next month I've recorded a podcast with Gates Dowd, who is the marketing wizard. That is her official title with Floodgate Games. So literally she has a wand and she runs around and taps the wand on her phone and makes Floodgate tweets appear.
That's really cute.
Yeah. So that was a really awesome interview. She was hardcore into Magic the Gathering. Like just a little preview. Like she was into Magic the Gathering, and it's really fun to hear her story about how she came to be into the scene, and it's just how sometimes life can work that leads you into a place that just ends up becoming what you always wanted to do. So something to look out for February, because each month we want to showcase an interview from industry professionals. So she's going to be our February, and I have literally 1, 2, 3 more like lined up literally until March, April, May, till May. Theoretically, we're on the ball, man.
Beautiful. Thank you for carrying this podcast, buddy.
No problem, friend. Do you have anything else to say?
I'm going to go to bed.
It's late.
It's super late. But hey, I did not take an energy drink tonight, and
Good for you.
I did just fine.
We did both do fine, aside from the fact that I'm like semi-talk whispering.
It's fine. It's fine. It's totally fine.
Turn me up. I'm
gonna turn you way up. I'm just gonna put like a thumping bass behind you, so it sounds like you're doing it intentional, and just gonna have like a lot of energy behind it.
Speaking of Well, not speaking of thumping, where do they find you at Twitter?
I don't know. I kind of stopped Twitter. I don't know.
You don't like Twitter?
I don't. I've had a really bad attitude about social media lately.
Dude, it sucks. It still sucks. Like
Like,
sorry,
it's-
folks. Like, it's a lot of
Yeah.
it's hard work, especially
Like,
now that we
yeah.
have like your own, and then you have to like think of something witty for both Rolling Doubles Twitter and your own Twitter. It's like, come on, man. Like, ain't nobody got time for that.
I don't want to like live on social media. But I don't know if we can thrive as a podcast without doing social media. But I have no desire to do it.
Don't worry, I
don't
just
know.
hired you on your sultry voice. I'll do everything else, and your
My plan is working perfectly.
your sultry voice and your editing skills.
Sort of. There's been a couple episodes where we've had surprise music in the middle of the episode. So you're welcome, audience.
No problem. Anyways, Twitter at Roll Doubles, Facebook
Yeah.
at Rolling Doubles Podcast. I think Rolling Doubles,
Yep.
and we're on Tumblr.
You're not on Tumblr.
We're on
But
Tumblr
it's just-
where we post a lot of weird gifs.
It's just weird gifs, and it was nude gifs of me until they stopped posting pornography. So.
Right? Yep. So sorry, folks, for everyone that was interested. The whole like one of you, which is basically your own wife. Never mind. She can see free gifts of you every night.
Every night.
I never want to see you in real life.
Never. It's not
Never.
gonna happen.
It's just
It's gonna be. There's no point.
there's no
'Cause
point.
There's not even. There's a good chance I'm not wearing pants right now.
There's a good chance. I don't want to see you stand up either. I'm going to hang up
I'm
this
not
phone
going to.
call. This has just evolved into just a mess.
Have a good night, everyone. It's
Yep.
been a pleasure. This is Jacob Russell signing off.
I'm not signing off yet. Yeah, I'm just going to stall talk to you.
Oh my gosh. What's great is that no one listens this far. Okay, if there is someone who listens this far and they tell me that they've listened this far, I will.
Dude, give him a game from your game
Ooh.
pile.
I should give them a game from my game pile.
Yes, it's a giveaway.
We're gonna give you a giveaway.
Actually, I think I'm seriously gonna think about doing a giveaway. Like when I get my copy of Mysterious Manor, I'll probably end up giving that away. Like a serious
Ooh.
one. And I want there to be like we like edit in like a secret code word, and whoever can like no one. It's like people could jump to the end of the podcast and get the secret code word. Like it has to be like super like in the middle,
Yeah.
and so like they really need to like pay attention. Will you do that?
What game?
Will you do that? Will you give them like would you give them a board game?
Yeah,
you-
sure.
All right.
Yeah. Yes, I will give them a board game.
Okay. So if you listen
But-
to this,
It cannot be my buddy Derek because he definitely listens to every episode. No, it totally can. If he does, I'll test him. Derek, if you're listening to this and you're the first one.
is there like a keyword? Tell them the keyword.
Ooh, the keyword is schnozberries.
Schnozberries? I was gonna say thin cardboard.
Oh my gosh, what a terrible joke. Like, I had nothing come to my head at all.
Thin cardboard is our Z name.
Because it's paper. It's so clever.
God damn.
This is so dumb.
This is the dumbest thing we've ever done.
I'm not editing this out.
No.
We're going to push this puppy to an hour and a half.
No.
I'm going to bed.
Yeah. Anyways, thanks for listening. Please actually just unsubscribe from us at this point.
Could you,
I mean,
this,
this is
I'd appreciate if our listener count went down, actually.
yeah, that
I
would
think I
be
understand.
surprising. Actually,
To all, what?
I was gonna say that because I have my board game geek picture as our logo, some guy, because I'm selling games on there too. Some guy was like, "Hey, I'm going through your podcast. I'm on Dropping a Deuce." And I'm like,
What?
I was like, "Oh, sweet man! Like, thank you. That's super awesome." So
That's amazing.
yeah.
Well,
So
to
thank
that
you, guy. Now you're gonna unsubscribe from us.
The keyword is schnozberries.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening and hanging in there. Please leave a like or drop a like, and that'll be it. Come see us next week, where we won't be around, but the week after,
We totally
we will
will.
probably do episode 18 as long as we haven't met each other, which will still probably be the case.
To all of our listeners, I love you inappropriately.
Oh, gross.
Oh, that's not what I meant. Jeez, what did you go to? Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks for listening. Music intro is Sivu Play by Fantastic Plastic Machine, and music bumpers were created by myself using Apple Loops and GarageBand for iOS. Join us next week as we continually cry for help in another episode of Rolling Doubles Podcast.